Anytime there's a 13 involved, that is suspicious. I fear we've lost the plot a little bit with that. I would say it's like one of the most complex album covers that Taylor has had. Do I truly believe she's gonna perform at the halftime show? This is Taylor's way of educating us truly. She said, y'all need to read more books. You need to go touch grass and read some Hamlet. It feels silly to even theorize what this would be about. I haven't seen a single person talk about this yet. Maybe the death of a showgirl isn't a double album, it's reputation. Will I bring up the karma theory? I don't think it would be a theory video if I didn't. Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Nina. If you are new here, welcome, and if you're not new, thanks for coming back. Oh my goodness, I have so many words to say and not enough hours in the day, truly. I have spent days writing notes about every Easter egg, every theory, every unhinged thought that everybody has about this album, all the Easter eggs that I was able to see in the podcast with the vinyl variants, the CDs, literally everything, the rollout, the photo shoot, and my predictions for what it all means. If this is the first video you're seeing from me, hi, I'm Nina. I mostly make content about Taylor Swift and a lot of music stuff, guitar lessons. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss a single video because there's a lot coming. I like to say this is my busy season. The title of my notes is literally Showgirl Crash Out because I felt absolutely insane typing out this many notes and going through this many theories. It's like this date and this color and then 3 years ago this happened. Literally, it's like we're trying to solve some kind of high-class crime. They really just need to hire the Swifties for the CIA, the FBI, and all of that because first of all, we remember everything, and second of all, if we don't know it, we will not stop until we find out what it is. So I decided today to just focus on the Easter eggs and the theories and all of that, and then do a separate video for a full track list breakdown because there's just so much. And also, as an original Karma Truther, I have taken on the responsibility of putting forth to you guys the most unhinged, crazy, insane theories, whether I believe them or not, and also whether Taylor is intentionally dropping these Easter eggs or clues. Sometimes it's absolutely coincidence, and that's the scarier part, truly. I haven't taken a math class in like 7 years, yet Taylor Swift has me out here doing PEMDAS, adding, subtracting, looking at dates and years. Taylor, please, I was an English major. Can we bring it back to the words, please? Numbers are not my strong suit. I've seen people decoding Braille. Like, she made us this way, truly. And if you all say, oh, you're looking too into it, like you're reaching, I promise you, Taylor knows. She is the reason that we look so far deep into things is because she intended it to be that way and she thinks it's fun. Before we get into the deep dive, there's a few things I want to clarify. A lot of people are disagreeing with the theory that this album was meant to be TS11, that it was supposed to come after Midnights, and then Tortured Poets happened and that kind of got pushed to the side because there's a lot of things with this new era and album that just didn't exist during the Midnights era. But the reason I think that Taylor had this idea all along is because she's been liking tweets about it. Like, she wouldn't go and like a tweet of somebody saying that there was Easter eggs dropped in the Bejeweled video or in the Antihero music video or stuff that was happening in the Midnights era. I truly think she had this idea all along, and it wasn't a matter of when it was coming out, it was a matter of how she was going to create it and waiting for the right moment to do so. So I was kind of thinking during the Midnights era, she probably was trying to make this concept come to life, but just didn't know how to do it yet. And then she went through everything that inspired Tortured Poets. That kind of took the forefront, and that was something she needed to do. So even if she didn't have this exact album in mind, I think she always had the concept for it. And a lot of people are like, well, she said she made it last summer while she was on tour in Europe. Yes, the album was created last year, for sure, because she obviously hadn't worked with Max Martin and Shelby back in so long, and they reconnected during the Eras tour and they decided to go full force and create this album. But just because they created it last year doesn't mean it wasn't planned ahead of time, doesn't mean Taylor wasn't writing songs for it, doesn't mean she wasn't conceptualizing it all in her head, because we know that she will find a line that she wrote down 3 years ago and put it into a song of an album that she's creating right then. It's not like nothing of the Showgirl era existed before they sat down in the studio that first day. Taylor's a planner. You guys know she plans things years in advance. She used to say like her whole life was planned like 2 to 3 years in advance all the time. And so I don't think this is something that just started in the middle of last summer, is all that I'm saying. And also on the podcast, she had said that she had been wanting to make this album for so long.
This is the record I've been wanting to make for a very long time.
Again, she just needed the right timing, the right people to make it with. And I truly feel like it all fell into place because it is very much an album that will reflect the Eras Tour and the end of the Eras Tour and everything that went on behind the scenes. She's obviously always been a showgirl, but this was the pinnacle of her career. She has never been more famous than she is right now. Literally, that clip of the podcast, I think, got 169 million views. That is crazy for me to conceptualize. Next thing I wanted to talk about is the different types of Easter eggs, because I think we can get confused about what an Easter egg is. And I think Taylor touched on this in the podcast. Like, she told us these are her parameters. It will never point back to her personal life. It can do with dates, colors, numbers, all of that kind of stuff, lyrics. But in my mind, there's two different Easter eggs. There's Easter eggs hinting at things that are happening in the future that are a little bit more direct and obvious, and usually you can pick up on it. And for example, that would be colors, dates she's gonna release something, details about the album like the producers, the sound, and stuff like that, and the aesthetics of the album. For example, when she made that playlist of all the Max Martin songs, it was kind of like a nod. Okay, so this is going to be the producer of this new album, because why else would she do that? And she's always said like some of the Easter eggs are like directly right in front of you. And I think another example of that would be the door at the end of the Eras Tour, walking through the orange door. I think that was pretty direct. And I think we've forgotten like those Easter eggs are pretty obvious if you're looking for them. Now, the other type of Easter egg is like a hindsight Easter egg. This is something that you were not going to pick up on in the moment because you don't know the context behind it. It's going to be something you remember in hindsight, being like, oh my gosh, she said that lyric in the NYU speech. That's a good example because that was a very lyrically dense Easter egg speech where she said like basically that whole speech was just hinting at the lyrics of Midnights.
When we lose things, we gain things too. The scary news is you're on your own now. But the cool news is you're on your own now. We will breathe in, breathe through, breathe deep, and breathe out.
And I definitely think she did that in the podcast, and later on I'm going to talk about what I think are potential lyrics. But I do think we're going to have a lot of these hindsight Easter eggs when the album comes out and we get to learn more about stuff, because then we're going to be like, oh my gosh, that made so much sense, or like this is from the podcast or whatever. They're Easter eggs that we could not have known ahead of time because we didn't have more information, if that makes sense. I'm going to repeat this once again. Taylor will never plant an Easter egg that points back to her personal life. And I feel like people have forgotten that. I fear we've lost the plot a little bit with that. Something we just need to remember. And all of this is supposed to be a fun thing. It's not supposed to be taken too seriously. It's not that deep. It's literally just for fun. Taylor said it herself. She loves to surprise us. She loves to do little riddles and hints and stuff like that. She finds great joy in it. She always has since the very beginning. That being said, every Easter egg or theory or prediction that I make should be taken with a grain of salt. I really do try not to reach too far down the rabbit hole because sometimes it just gets too crazy and you're like, there's no way that's an Easter egg. Like, we're really reaching for that one. But I love making connections, whether they are intentional or not. I love drawing parallels between albums and different visuals and stuff like that. Regardless if Taylor meant it or not, sometimes things just happen and things just align, and it's kind of crazy some of these connections that we're able to make. Okay, so now that we have all of that out of the way, let's get into it because we have a lot to talk about. Here's my main points that I'm going to be talking about today. We're going to go over the New Heights podcast, some Easter eggs in there, the album cover photo shoot, and all the merch and the variants that we've gotten so far, countdown, the rollout, everything like that. Some parallels that I've been drawing between Showgirl and the Red era. I'm going to do a quick skim over the track list and give you my initial thoughts on it. And then I have this theory that I am so excited to share with you guys because I haven't seen a single person talk about this yet. It might be nothing, but it is a really, really weird coincidence that all of these things are connecting. And it has to do with Travis's sweatshirt that says Miracle on it. And then lastly, I want to talk about how I think Reputation is the sister album to The Life of a Showgirl and all the reasons I think that. Will I bring up the karma theory? I don't think it would be a theory video if I didn't. So I'm going to go with Okay, so there were some very obvious Easter eggs with the New Heights podcast, especially all the stuff that was behind them. We clocked that right away, the TS logo, or the 4 locks that ended up being on the countdown screen. We still don't know 2 out of the 4 because we've gotten the orange, and then we've since gotten the purple one. And then there was the jar of friendship bracelets, which I thought was super cute. Another one of the first things I noticed was Taylor's lipstick was more orange than her classic red color, and I think this was the same exact one that she wore to the Chiefs games last season, and it was a NARS lipstick that was Morocco Matte Warm Cinnamon. So it was most likely that, or someone else pointed out that it could have been the Rare Beauty Soft Pinch Tinted Lip Oil in shade Joy. So I will link those down below for you guys if you want to wear the same lipstick as Taylor. But she's all about the details. Like, she truly thinks of everything. Another thing we noticed in the background is the book behind her that said 90s in orange font. A lot of people took that as like a 90s trend, like Willow, like I come back stronger than a 90s trend. One of the trends in the 90s was to put a hidden track on your CDs that you're coming out with. So a lot of the times the songs were not listed on the track list, but at the very end, a hidden song would play and it would be one that nobody knew of. I know Taylor said this is 12 songs. It's not 13, it's not 14, it's not a double album like the anthology. So we do have to take her word at face value because she seemed pretty adamant about that. But I wouldn't put it past her to like tell a little lie, you know, or like find a loophole. Specifically because little Pinocchio is in the corner next to Travis with his hands covering his eyes. So it does feel like she might be like hiding something or like not telling the full truth about it. I don't know. And Pinocchio has been a topic of conversation in the Easter eggs. He is made of wood, obviously. A lot of people are saying that could be connected to the song Wood. Who knows? The story of Pinocchio is that he was a wooden boy, and when he learned how to love, he turned into a real boy. I could see that theme entering into Taylor Swift's life. You know, post-tortured poets, meeting Travis, coming back to life. We'll talk more about Pinocchio later. Travis's sweatshirt miracle. I just feel like there's no random acts when it comes to Taylor. At first I thought this could be the name of a poem or a hidden track or like something that we don't know yet. So I just made a note of that, but we'll get back to my full theory a little bit later. And like I said before, this isn't like me saying like, oh, I'm disappointed it's not a double album. I'm actually so happy because that way I know every single track on this album is held to such a high standard that we know that they're all gonna be so good. Taylor has such high expectations of herself to constantly put her best foot forward. I feel like she's finally kind of stepping into that quality versus quantity. And of course, like I love every single one of her songs, but the fact that she put quality like up on a platform this time, and that was like her main goal of this album, was to not just release all the music she writes, to be very specific about the quality of each song, the lyrics, and everything like that.
I have different goals with different albums. Tortured Poets Department, my goals were strictly lyrical. This, I have a totally different set of goals. I wanted the album to feel the way my life felt.
The next theory I want to get into based on the podcast is the Super Bowl halftime performance theory. The Super Bowl coming up next year is Super Bowl 60. This is a number that Taylor mentioned.
We're very deep in a sourdough obsession that has taken over my life. The sourdough's taken over my life in a huge way. I'm really talking about bread 60% of the time now.
And a lot of people think that them talking about sourdough was like a code for them talking about the Super Bowl in her performing at the Super Bowl, which is so funny. But there are a lot of weird connections happening that are almost undeniably connected. They're talking about bread, and she said, I'm thinking about bread 60% of the time, and she kind of like paused there, and Travis and Jason were laughing, and I feel like their reactions to what Taylor's saying kind of give us more insight than her just saying it, because I feel like Travis has the worst poker face ever. Like, he's reacting to everything she's saying, and we don't know if it's because he thinks it's funny or if he knows something. And he knows everything. So, I don't know. I feel like he's just chomping at the bit to like, for everybody to know all the secrets and everything. It just seems like he's just so excited. She said, sourdough has taken over my life in a huge way. And she said she's been baking the last 6 months. So, I could see how those could be code for like working on a halftime performance. 60% of the time, it's Super Bowl 60. Sourdough is connected reacted to the mascot of the 49ers because their mascot is Sourdough Sam. They're hosting the Super Bowl this year at Levi's Stadium, which happens to be somewhere Taylor performed on the Eras Tour. And another number that kept getting thrown out is 47. She said, "Thank you, Jason, for screaming for 47 seconds."
Thank you for screaming for like 47 seconds for me. That was so nice.
Interesting number to choose. And then he asked her how many countries she went to on the Eras Tour, and she said 47,000 million, like exaggerating. And then there's that 47 again. She repeated it.
47,000 countries, Jason.
The 47th stop on the Eras Tour was at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California. So that was interesting. And 60 minus 47 gives us 13. You're right. I don't know how that math works out, but it does. She was also talking about singing the national anthem at sports games and how she always loved to watch all the halftime shows and that she's memorized all the halftime shows, kind of emphasizing that. I think her little comment that said, like, if there's one thing male sports fans want to see more of on their screens and in their spaces, it's more of me. And I felt like that was a little tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, they're gonna be seeing more of me, you know? And then also behind in the middle of them is Travis's Super Bowl football trophy, and it's on its side. I don't know if that has anything to do with like halftime. It's on its side, like half, I don't know. But there was a moment that she literally moved to the side so that you could see that, and she kind of smirked at the camera. She had a lot of like Office moments, like the show The Office, like looking at the camera, like breaking the fourth wall a little bit.
But if you want to look at that,
but if you do,
then it's there.
There was a few times that she was just laughing to herself, thinking like, made me think it was an Easter egg. I don't know. Do I truly believe she's gonna perform at the halftime show? I don't think it's impossible. I mean, just because she's going to be performing at the halftime show doesn't mean Travis is gonna make it to the Super Bowl. He might not make it to the Super Bowl. Is he gonna want her to do that? And honestly, I think Travis would be over the moon if Taylor decided to do that and like share his stage. I think he would love it, honestly. I don't think he's that insecure that he would be upstaged by Taylor. I think he would love it. I think it would be more so if she would want to do it. And I also think she's turned down the Super Bowl so many times, I think, because she wanted to own her music before she did it, because it would be a televised thing. And if you know anything about the Masters rules, publication stuff, she needs permission from the people who own the Masters to perform her old songs on TV. And this was the problem that she ran into at I think it was the VMAs in the Lover era. They did not want her to perform her old songs on recorded television, so if it's on live TV, you need permission. But now that she has all of her masters, she no longer needs that permission. And also in a post in New Orleans, when Taylor performed there, she brought out Sabrina Carpenter wearing the orange dress in New Orleans, and Taylor Nation tweeted at somebody or commented on somebody's post on Twitter that said, like, how does this only have 47 likes? Weird mention of 47. And also, someone on TikTok had mentioned that if you're not in showbiz, you probably wouldn't know this, but there is something called the 47 conspiracy, and it's very popular in show business because apparently you just see 47s everywhere in films and whatnot. It started out as an inside joke between people apparently in the business, and as people got more successful, it became more intentional. So like apparently J.J. Abrams made it super popular in the Star Trek movies. Subsequently, a couple other shows have picked it up over time, and it's just become this kind of inside joke and a comment on the Easter egg culture. So I think that's interesting because if you think about like show business, Showgirl, I don't know. Another thing about the sourdough, she mentioned making funfetti sourdough, and apparently this was a term first used by Pillsbury in what year? 1989. And this is where I think, like, was this intentional? There's a good chance it was not, but it is absolutely insane that these things just, like, connect. So crazy. I wrote down that she held up a 3, and she said the year 1973, which might be important at some point. And then she's talking about the Easter eggs, and she's saying, like, if you don't want to look at that one thing, like, upside down backwards in Braille.
Upside down backwards in Braille. You don't need to know what that is. If you want to look at that,
if you do,
then it's there.
The way that she said that was super interesting because she said upside down backwards, and then she moved out of the way and the Super Bowl trophy was there People took Braille super seriously and they're like, all right, something's in Braille, we gotta find what it is. And miraculously, some people figured out that during Bejeweled on the Eras tour, there was like dots that looked like Braille and they flipped it upside down and backwards and apparently like it spells something out. Again, don't know if that's an Easter egg for anything, but it is weird that she specifically said that. It's really hard to take Taylor at face value when she says so many things that mean so many other things. And then she talked about the NYU speech being an entire Easter egg in itself, which is obviously why I think she said some lyrics during the podcast. She also said when she was mentioning like Easter eggs are always going to point towards music or a musical or a project.
I'm never going to plant an Easter egg that ties back to my personal life. It's always going to be towards music or a musical with something I have coming up.
But I'm like, musical, wait, what? She's never put out a musical or done anything like that. So Female Rage, the musical? I thought that was an interesting thing that she said the word musical because she's never really been involved in that. The only thing I can think of is Cats, and I don't think she would want to reference that movie. Another number that she kept saying was 16. She said, give me 16 months. And then she said that Jason flew 16 feet away.
Give me 16 months.
You're going to pick up on it.
It's like, you know when you see a cricket and it's here and then it's gone and it's 16 feet that way.
If you think about 16 months from that date, August 13th, 16 months later would be December 13th next year, which is so crazy. What is she planning for her birthday next year? Maybe something big. I don't know. Another thing is she said that Jason was like a cricket. And who else is a cricket but Jiminy Cricket from Pinocchio? That connection's interesting. And also the most recent vinyl that she dropped was the Shiny Bug edition. What's a shiny bug other than Jiminy Cricket? That could be connected. I feel like the Pinocchio theme or morals of the story is gonna come into play during this album, possibly. I also want to talk about the bookcase because a lot of people brought up that the books behind them meant something. I know a lot of people like figured out these artists and like what paintings they've done and stuff. The most notable one that I saw someone talk about on TikTok was Basquiat, I believe. And apparently his paintings included a lot of poetry, song lyrics, and expressionist graffiti. Immediately went to the man wall where karma is written in big letters in orange, mind you. And if we go with the clock thing, karma would be at midnight, 12 o'clock, TS 12. And again, I'm not saying that I think this album is karma. I'm not saying that at all. I just think that this has a lot to do with all of that. And then the most obvious connection is that Travis is actually working on a documentary about Basquiat. I said this in my last video, but I truly believe like this album is her karma. This is her vindication. This is her finding a love that she's always wanted. This is her being happy, being at the height of her career. It feels like a culmination. Karma takes all my friends to the summit, which is 12 o'clock, midnight. There were a lot of art books, and I'm not like an artist, so I can't really speak on these artists and what like certain types of paintings mean and whatnot, but this girl did say some really interesting things about the artists. A lot of them have a very expressionist, dreamlike type of paintings. She said one of them was known for really bold colors. He numbered his paintings, and she said she went to look up number 12, and it was the exact color scheme of this new album. Hello? And then she said she went to go look up 13, and it was red and yellow. Red and yellow together, Chiefs colors, orange. Again, if Taylor doesn't do these things intentionally, it is actually insane. It's crazy. Okay, I made a list of possible lyrics that I think were hidden in the podcast. This one wasn't in the podcast, but this was from her Instagram post, and baby, that's show business for you. I think that's gonna be a lyric in the title track. And then the rest of these are just things that I've heard her say throughout the podcast that I thought could be lyrics or associated. She mentioned wish list early on in the podcast, and this was before we knew the track list, or that is if you watch the podcast first. She said it's like everything on my wish list. So that was like a name drop there. She said something about the sourdough community. She said this is an underworld. I thought that was such an odd thing to say. And immediately when she said this is an underworld, I thought of that scene in the Karma music video where it flips from the statue and it's like literally the underworld hell almost, and she's got all the like masks and like black and like cursed things. Something to know note. And then when she was talking about loving the number 13, she was saying Triskaidekaphilia, and it sounds like Ophelia, the title of the song. And she did a little smirk after that one. And then this one, I would bet money that this is a lyric on the album because it just seems like a perfect lyric to describe her current relationship. And she said, depth without darkness. It makes so much sense because I think in the past she thought that she could only have a super deep connection with somebody who was tortured and somebody who was like had a lot of demons and that like makes somebody complex and everything. But I think with Travis, she realized she can have a super deep connection with somebody who doesn't have all this darkness surrounding them and isn't like bringing her down in that way. So I thought that was a very profound thing, just those 3 words. And then she had that line about saying your energy is expensive. And I don't know if this is just her being wise and her being Taylor Swift and spitting like wisdom, but your energy is expensive. Not everyone can afford it. I think that would be a great lyric. And then this one, she was talking about Travis. He sees what he wants to see and it bodes well for me. Either that's a lyric or she just talks in poetry. And then when she was talking about creating the album with Max Martin and Shellback, she said it was like catching lightning in a bottle. Immediately calls back to the prophecy. I would not be surprised if she referenced the prophecy in this new album because that song is all about like, please change the prophecy. I've been here waiting. I'm like begging you to change the prophecy. And obviously the prophecy has kind of been changed. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a callback to that song. And also someone pointed out on the deluxe CDs that the bracelet has little lightning bolts on it. So her saying catching lightning in a bottle, I think there could be something there. And then she said this one thing when she was talking about the Easter eggs. She said, if you know, you know, you know, you know, then you know. And so I don't think that's technically a lyric, but I have a feeling that's gonna come up at some point. Or she's just referencing Friends.
They don't know that we know they know we know. But see, they don't know that we know that they know.
She was talking about how Travis was on stage, and this is what she said. She said, and when the lights are bright, he slows down time. You're telling me that's not a lyric? She just pulled that out right there. I think that could make an appearance. I loved when she said, I'm in the business of human emotion. That might not have been a lyric, but it definitely sounds like it could be like in a poem or something. She also just likes to use really big words. So this one, the glorious fortuitous mistake, could just be her flexing her thesaurus. Easier in principle than it is in practice. Could just be a saying, but sounds like it could be a lyric. So that's all that I have so far for the lyrics that I could have possibly heard. Please comment down below and tell me if you picked out any other phrases or things that she said that could be taken as a lyric. I would love to see because obviously I've watched this like multiple times, but like it's a 2-hour podcast. It's hard to pick out every single thing. The next thing I want to talk about is the album cover, the photo shoot, the variants. And for the main cover art, I was like taken aback. I was not expecting that at all. Obviously has a lot of layers to it. I would say it's like one of the most complex album covers that Taylor has had. It's very glamorous, over the top, opulent, ethereal, expensive, high concept, detailed. These are all words I would use to describe the cover as well as like all of the photo shoot. It just seems like so much energy and intention was poured into these photos. I saw something else that said like there was a Life magazine in the 1920s that looked really similar to the album cover. So I think she drew inspiration from a lot of places for this album cover. And when we talk about this album cover kind of giving us a glimpse at what the album is about, it is very much like the appearance of a facade that Taylor has when she is performing, and then lyrically everything that's going on behind the curtain. She obviously went through the orange door, through the curtain, behind the scenes, and that is kind of where this album begins. She explained that she chose this cover photo because she really wanted an off-stage moment, because that's what the album is actually about. It's not about what happened on stage, it's what happened when she got home, everything in her real life. She said that after she would finish a show, she would just go like lay in the bathtub, and that's kind of the visual we're getting. She's like glitzy, but she's like in water. A very vulnerable kind of depiction of what that looks like. It shows the contrast between like being Taylor Swift on stage and being that showgirl in front of 70, 80, 90,000 people every night on the Eras tour, and then the contrast of going home and just like being the person Taylor. So she's submerged in water, but she's in this diamond bodysuit thing, and it feels very, I don't want to say the word like invasive, but it's just like a very, I guess vulnerable is the word that I was saying before. It's a version of her that not everybody sees all the time, you know? And also that diamond bodysuit looks a lot like the Midnight's bodysuit that had the scallops on it, and that was always the last outfit she wore of the night, and that is the outfit she wore when she left the stage. So I think like on the podcast and with this cover, it really feels like she's explaining this album to be like, it's going to be real and raw and authentic, but it's also going to be glittery and fun and upbeat. And I feel like we're already getting that sense with this podcast of her letting us into behind the scenes. Like, again, like I said before in my last video, we had never heard Taylor talk this much in years. I would even say like way more so than the Miss Americana documentary. This let us into like the daily life stuff, really let us get to know Taylor the person behind the scenes, post Eras tour. It's also interesting that only her head is above the water. I think that's like a super powerful image. One parallel that people immediately drew is with Ophelia, and that is going to be the first track of the album, The Fate of Ophelia. So it goes, she drowned in a pond surrounded by flowers, and I definitely think Taylor was intentional in kind of emulating that image, especially because this is the first song on the album, a transition from Tortured Poet into Showgirl, and like a turning point, a crossroads, like either succumbing to being a tortured artist or getting back up and going on. I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, Showgirl, obviously we know which way she took. Another interesting thing with the title that's on the album cover is that the T, A, and S are lighter than the other letters, so they're kind of standing out from the rest. So T-A-S, Taylor Allison Swift. I don't know if that's gonna have to do with anything in the future that connects to other things that we've seen. This photo shoot has also so many connections with the Reputation era, and I'm gonna talk more about that. It was literally done in the same theater that the Delicate music video was filmed at. It's the Los Angeles Theater, and the fragmented part of the CD, so like the sticker that's on this actual CD for Showgirl, is so similar to the one for Reputation. That fragmented triangle kind of broken pieces look to it, except Reputation is black and white and this one is in like full color. It also kind of relates to the lyric from I Can Do It With a Broken Heart when she says, all the pieces of me shattered, as the crowd was chanting more. There's that photo of her on the chair that's literally the vigilante shit chair. If I was her, I would also reuse the chair. I don't know how else to explain these photos other than just like expensive. She looks expensive. She knows she's hot. She is the moment. Every single photo is just like show-stopping. My favorite one is the one with the bob, the black bob, and she's doing this with her eyes, like the Reputation cover. I think I just like it because I like the green and the purple together. I do like that there's other color schemes other than just the orange, because I was getting a little worried that orange was the only thing, and it's a very aggressive color and not super easy to incorporate into my everyday life. So I'm glad that she has others now. And the thing about the vigilante shit chair and that performance is that that came from a Showgirl performance. It was inspired by the musical Chicago, and it feels also very burlesque. And so I think it was intentional to bring the chair back for the photo shoot. And then when we look at the deluxe CD variants, there was 4, and they came with necklace, bracelet, or these 2 keychains, and each of them have something to do with a song or a lyric. The only one I think that didn't was the eye, the like purple eye keychain. It said violet in quotation marks or something. Apparently all the other ones had quotation marks around it, and it was part of a title of a song, like the actually romantic keychain, this. But this one, it's very much Elizabeth Taylor, because, you know, a simple Google search will tell you that her eyes, she was known for her violet eyes. And so I think that might be a lyric in the song Elizabeth Taylor, but it's the only one that's not associated with a song on the track list. Now, when Taylor held up the back of the vinyl, her pinky, it was so weird. It was like pointing to this little orange box that was below the 12th track on the album. And some people think that that is a little interesting and taking note of it, because it's kind of random that that orange box is there right underneath the track 12, and it seems like it's covering something up. Whether it's a track, a hidden track, or a poem, or something else, I don't really have any thoughts about that, but I definitely think it's something to note. The deluxe CDs also have a little 13 in the corner on the envelopes, and everybody took note of that, because what does that mean? What is that? Anytime there's a 13 involved, that is suspicious. So the names of the variants are Frightening, Rapturous, Beautiful, and Sweat and Vanilla Perfume, which doesn't really go with the rest of them. And people think this is an Easter egg for maybe a fragrance that Taylor is coming out with, and I think this would be the perfect album to launch a new fragrance, because it's literally Showgirl, like all of those vibes. And then when they recently posted the new vinyl variants playing on the record player, there was like a little perfume bottle next to it, so I don't know if that was an Easter egg for that, but keep note of that, because I would love a new fragrance. I just haven't been the same since they stopped top-selling Wonderstruck, truly. Now, for these brand new vinyl variants, they did a countdown yesterday? Yeah, yesterday they did a countdown 1 week after the first countdown, and I was convinced that it was going to be something completely different because why would she do a countdown for a merch drop? But I should have known better because this is not the first time, this is not nearly the first time that this has happened, where there's been a countdown and then we get like random merch drop. The first, I will never forget, the summer launch of the Swifty Pool floaties. If you were there for that, you know. But honestly, it wasn't the worst thing because those vinyls were so pretty. I obviously bought both of them, and they are the Shiny Bug edition. Violet Shimmer and Wintergreen and Onyx Marble. And usually Taylor will name her vinyl editions after lyrics and songs. We had the Blood Moon Orange Midnights. We had the Aquamarine Green 1989 variant. Like, she's very intentional with how she names them, so I think Violet Shimmer is probably gonna be somewhere, and then we probably are gonna have Wintergreen and Onyx to be describing words for something different. Going back to the Shiny Bug, I thought it was super odd. Definitely shouldn't be taken at face value because, some people think this will connect to Jiminy Cricket and Pinocchio because Shiny Bug, Jiminy Cricket. It comes with a unique poem, which I think is interesting. The poem must be called The Shiny Bug. People are also saying that this could be a nod to like the Beatles because Taylor's always kind of being compared with the Beatles and the records that they set, and her breaking those records, kind of living up to her own name and to continue on that forward path. Beatles are shiny, and maybe she's just saying like, I'm just a shiny bug. I don't know. That one might be a reach, but again, like when she's giving us Shiny Bug, what do we have to go off of, you know? And it was also interesting that they changed the entire aesthetic of the website from that orange glitter to purple glitter, and then that minty green to like an olive green. It is just so odd because then they also changed all of Taylor's social media profile pictures and covers and all of that stuff to this new vinyl variant. So I don't know if every single week they're gonna do this, so I guess we'll see you back here next Monday. But she's never done this before where she has like released each one separately, and also she's never had different vinyl variants from the CDs. So that makes me wonder if all of the new vinyl variants are going to be different covers and different colors. But I wouldn't be surprised at this point. And then somebody brought up this behind the scenes video from the Midnights era where they were testing different vinyl colors, and these exact two colors were on the table next to like the Blood Moon Midnights one, and it was kind of crazy. Those two were conceptualized back then and then used now for this album. I don't think it's, obviously they didn't know those two colors were going to be used for this album. I do not think she planned that far in advance for vinyl pressings, but it is a weird coincidence, and maybe she always liked that color or pressing and she like kept it in her mind, and then now she's using it for this. Okay, I want to talk about a few parallels from the Red era because this album is truly giving a lot of like the Lucky One vibes and Starlight, Old Hollywood and Fame and all that kind of stuff. The first thing is that this album was announced 13 years to the day after the Red album was announced originally in 2012, August 12th, 2013, August 12th, 2025. And in the All Too Well 10 short film, when we have the flash forward, it says 13 years gone. If we're going with the same timeline, All Too Well original version came out October 22nd, 2012. 13 years after that would be this year, October 22nd, 2025. Isn't that crazy? She did talk about All Too Well 10 on the podcast and said it's one of her favorite songs she's ever done, specifically All Too Well 10. Also, when I think Showgirl, I totally think about the Red Ringleader Taylor from the Red Tour. She just seems to be like the showgirl to me. So now talking about the sound of the album, obviously we know since Max Martin and Shellback are producing it that it's gonna be like pop perfection, but like Taylor always says, she never likes to do the same thing twice, so I do feel like there'll be some innovation with it. She said that this album has the storytelling and the lyrics of folklore, but like with the infectious, upbeat pop melodies that we love so much, and that's just like, I can't even imagine it. I feel like it's gotta be like 1989 with just like elevated lyrics. I already love it. I already know that I'm gonna love it so much. She said, melodies that are so infectious you're almost angry at it. That is almost like my favorite thing ever. The song that always comes to mind for me is Message in a Bottle, because the first time I heard that song, it was like drugs. Like, I feel like I knew the lyrics before the song was over. That's how infectious that song was for me. And so if I'm getting 12 of those, I'm gonna be very happy. Max Martin and Shellback and Taylor Swift, let's do it. And then she says lyrics that are just as vivid and crisp and focused. Yeah. So of course we're gonna have this hyper pop, hard hitting sounds. Travis was like, this one's gonna make you move. Like, this is gonna make you dance, because he can't help himself. And I think he was saying that about the song Cancelled, which is very interesting. But some of my favorite songs from the Max Martin Shellback duo are 22, Message in a Bottle, King of My Heart, Style, How You Get the Girl. So if these are anything like those, I'm gonna be so happy. And she emphasized how high of standards that she had for these songs. She said every single song on this album is on it for hundreds of reasons, meaning she just like took so much care to choose the track list. And also she said like, it's not the same album if you added one, it's not gonna be the same album if you took one. It's all perfect right there, 12 tracks. So I'm guessing if we're talking about Taylor's categories of pens, right? We got glitter gel pen, fountain pen, quill pen. Of course, people's first instinct is to say this gonna be a glitter gel pen album, and I do feel like that'll be very on the heavy side for sure, but I do think it's gonna be a good mix of fountain pen songs. And I'll remind you what the parameters for these are. Taylor said glitter gel pen are songs with lyrics that make you want to dance, sing, and toss glitter around the room. So obviously that's gonna have a big part in this album. But fountain pen is interesting because she said they're modern personal stories written like poetry about those moments you remember all too well, where you can see, hear, and feel everything in screaming detail. Now, I feel like those probably fit into more of the emotional songs, but the songs that she has on this playlist are Cruel Summer, False God, Holy Ground, Lavender Haze, Question. These are not your classic like sad, very emotional Taylor Swift songs. They're very nuanced, they're upbeat, but they do have a lot of emotional nuance and a lot of like very descriptive lyrics, and so I feel like it's gonna be a blend of both of these things, and that makes me so excited. So yeah, I think that's gonna be the overall sound of the album. I wanted to just go through the track list really quick because I don't have time to go into detail, because I really want to like spend some time with these tracks and really like delve into what they could be about. Immediately upon seeing, 12 tracks, I saw a couple theories. One person said like each track is going to represent each era, because now there's 12 eras, there's 12 tracks, which I could see. The Fate of Ophelia is really giving debut with all those little flowers. I think 1989 goes well with Eldest Daughter. Opalite, A Sparkly Gemstone could definitely be Speak Now vibes. Reputation, Ruin the Friendship. I feel like it could line up. Actually Romantic fits with Lover. Wood is Evermore. That's kind of funny. And then another theory I saw on TikTok was that these 12 tracks could emulate the 12 laws of karma, which I thought was so crazy, because then I began to go through the list and I was like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. For example, number 5 is the law of responsibility, and that would be eldest daughter, and usually like the connotation of eldest daughter is holding a lot of responsibility amongst your family. Number 10 is the law of change, and it says history repeats itself until we learn the lessons it offers. Cancelled. That one was kind of crazy. Number 11 is the law of patience and reward, and it says good things take time and effort, don't expect instant results. This is track 11, Honey, and I do feel like this song is going to be about Travis Kelce and like their relationship, so I think that would make a lot of sense, because like it did take her a long time to find this type of love. So I don't know, that is a theory that I am kind of rocking with, especially because karma. Hello, I said this album is her karma. Track 1, we have The Fate of Ophelia, and I'm sure all of us are in our Shakespeare era diving deep into all of this Hamlet and trying to figure out the context and the background, and there are some jarring parallels with The Fate of Ophelia. I'll just name a few. I don't want to go too in depth, but her death is described in Act 4, Scene 7, which everybody pointed out, 47. She was talking about 47 earlier. This song is a perfect bridge from Tortured Poets into this new era, because she's using literally like a literary reference from one of the most famous poets words to kind of describe the lead into this album. When I did a quick search on how she drowned and everything, it said it was the most haunting, symbolically rich moments in Hamlet, even though it happens off stage. I saw that and I was like, that. It happens off stage. Nobody sees it. Nobody sees her drowning. I just feel like because this song is called The Fate of Ophelia, it's not necessarily Taylor saying that she is, but I think she's going to be escaping that fate of like succumbing to the madness, obviously, because she talks a lot about being in the psych ward kind of in Tortured Poets, and this is her escaping, fresh out the slammer, if you will. But then it also says the queen describes it very lyrically and very strangely serene, which is very much like, you know, Taylor Swift. She's very lyrical. She describes things in this way. Apparently she was gathering wildflowers by the brook under a willow tree, and a branch broke and she fell into the brook. And then she floated away peacefully and drowned in the water. And it's interesting because it says she was unaware of her danger, which I think is very likely to know, because sometimes when you're in that mindset of being kind of crazy, you're kind of unaware that you're self-sabotaging, I guess. But man, it says this is one of the most romanticized feminine tragedies. And if that isn't like what the media's perception of Taylor Swift has been her whole life, I think this one is going to be super heavily like lyrical and parallels and references, and I'm really excited for this one actually. We'll all be breaking out our high school copy of Hamlet and reading our notes and brushing up on it. This is Taylor's way of educating us truly. She said, y'all need to read more books. You need more literature in your life, and you need to go touch grass and read some Hamlet. Also, I love the parallel people have pointed out. The surprise song piano has flowers on it, and then immediately after she dives into the water. I think that's like a crazy parallel with this thing with Ophelia. Also, the cover of the album is very similar to the painting of Ophelia, where only like her head is out of water, her whole body's like submerged, like Taylor on the cover. Track 2, Elizabeth Taylor. If you're like me, you immediately thought of the lyric and Ready for It from Reputation, Burton to this Taylor. I thought this was interesting because Elizabeth Taylor had many husbands, and she actually married Richard Burton 2 different times and divorced 2 different times, which I thought was interesting because if we look back on Tortured Poets, there was 2 situations that happened, and the second time Elizabeth Taylor got divorced was 1975. I'm not saying that that's like directly connected, but that is crazy. And then I think it was last year for Taylor Swift's birthday, Kelly Teller got her this ring, and Taylor posted it on her Instagram story, and it was this beautiful giant opal ring.
This is unreal, Kelly. Opal and blue topaz.
Happy birthday.
You really, I mean, this is like a present for Elizabeth Taylor, not me.
And on the outside was blue topaz, and the opal is Travis's birthstone, October, and then the blue topaz is her birthstone, December. And then she stated that it looked like it was meant for Elizabeth Taylor, not her Taylor. So that was a hindsight Easter egg right there. I'm really excited to kind of delve more into Elizabeth Taylor because there's obviously a ton of parallels with her life being so scrutinized, like her love life, and Taylor being scrutinized. Track 3, Opalite. Pretty immediately people went and looked this up because what is that if you don't already know what opalite is? We know what opal is. It's that, you know, gemstone that's super pretty and iridescent. An opalite is not opal. It's a man-made gemstone, but it's actually just glass that is manufactured to look like the stone. It's meant to look extremely beautiful, but it's fake. Could be a comment on the image of fame. And also someone pointed out if you like put a light to an opalite, it gives that like blue to orange look apparently. So those are some colors from the era. And also the koi fish looking dress, blue to orange, that was in the last leg of the Eras tour, so she probably would have had most of the Showgirl album done at that point. So she's planting Easter eggs like that. Father figure, I really don't know. I truly don't know what this could be about. I can't imagine this is about Scott. It could be about being burned by somebody who you thought of as close to you as a father figure, possibly her old record label situation, My Tears Ricochet vibes. I don't know, I think this is gonna be one that is not what we think it is. Eldest daughter, I think this is gonna destroy people. People have already been like, oh my god, it's eldest daughter and it's a track 5, like good luck to y'all, eldest daughters. I'm a middle child, which is arguably worse. But my sister is very excited for this one. I wonder if this is going to be more deep than her just being an older sister. It seems like it could be. It could just be like the responsibility of being a role model maybe and having all these people look up to you. It could be about somebody else. It could be like a third party situation. But track 5, that means I think this is going to be an all you had to do was stay situation where it is track 5, but it's gonna make you dance. And we haven't had one of those in a long time, so I'm kind of excited for this. Track 6, Ruin the Friendship. This is the uplift after track 5 if we're going by the anatomy of a Taylor Swift track list. This one is like a single. This is like, you know, Shake It Off, You Belong With Me, 22. So I think this one's gonna fall into that category. Ruin the Friendship could be taken a few ways. It could be, you know, friends to lovers, or it could be best friend breakup. And a lot of people are saying this is about Blake Lively. I feel like that's the obvious answer, but I don't know if that's the real subject matter. And I honestly don't know if Taylor would write about that. It seems more so leaning towards, for me, like the friends to lovers thing. Like ruin the friendship just sounds like something funny you say to somebody, like ruin friendship, like go for it, girl. I don't know. Track 7, Actually Romantic. This makes sense because maybe it goes through like everything that is supposed to be romantic and all the things that she's romanticized, and then her contrasting that with things that are actually romantic, things that have actually brought romance into her life, maybe, because romance can be more than just like your relationship and like bringing you flowers and stuff. I have a feeling there's gonna be like a contrast there. Wish list with the dollar signs. This is so interesting. I do wonder if this is gonna be about the Masters or anything like that. Yeah, I don't know. She was talking about on the podcast saying like, oh, this is like my wish list, and that was when she was talking about Travis like doing all these grand gestures for her. Now I'm a track 9 girl, so I do have to claim Wood. This is such an odd title and it could mean so many things. It feels silly to even theorize what this would be about. It does sound like it could be short for Hollywood. That goes with the Showgirl theme. It could have to do with Pinocchio and how he is wood and then he becomes a real boy. So maybe this has something to do with that theme of her coming back to life, you know, just getting color back into my face kind of vibes. I also wrote You Need Wood for Fire, and it seems like they've been using that fire heart emoji. So it is honestly super odd that they are using the fire heart emoji because I don't feel like we've seen any fire yet with like this photo shoot or any of the other stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how the fire heart plays into this. Also, people were drawing a parallel with like an actress called Natalie Wood, some like parallels with her life and how I think she starred in a movie or something that has to do with another connection somewhere. I'm excited to look more into that. And then track 10, we've got Cancelled, and I can only imagine it would be drawing inspiration from a single time in her life, but also maybe just like a comment on cancel culture. Travis said this one's fun to dance to, so I am very excited for this. Also, it being a track 10 is very telling because track 10s to me seem a little more aggressive and emotionally charged. For example, The Way I Loved You, Better Than Revenge, Death by a Thousand Cuts, Who's Afraid of Little Ol' Me. So I do feel like this one's gonna be lyrically shocking, and I'm very excited about it. Track 11 is Honey. Taylor egged this in her Happy Gilmore 2 Instagram story post when she said like, go watch it, and then she had a honey pot and a bear, and that was for the scene that Travis was in the movie with the honey and the bear and all that. So that was an Easter egg for the movie, but also for the track list, which I thought was so funny, and that's why I feel like this song is gonna have to do with her relationship with Travis. And also, there's some lyrics in the song Karma that say sweet like honey. I'm just drawing some connections here. Track 12 is The Life of a Showgirl featuring Sabrina Carpenter. I think this is the perfect song for Sabrina Carpenter to feature on just because obviously it's like she's like our modern day showgirl. Her aesthetic, her vibe, her performance at the Grammys was very showgirl, her tour, everything. And so I'm very excited to see how that goes. I think this one's gonna be like a bop. This is gonna be on the radio. I think this is gonna be a single. Hopefully there's a music video that they're both involved with. But that's my quick overview of the track list. Give this video a thumbs up if you want me to go deep dive headfirst into the track list because I would love to. Okay, brings me to my theory that I came up with a few days ago. I know I've been talking forever. We're almost done. Hang in there. Travis's sweatshirt says Miracle, and people were drawing some conclusions about it to, I don't know if it was like movies or songs or things that people starred in or something, but I kind of just was like, there's gotta be like some important reason. So I googled the Miracle because I'm like, there's gotta be like a specific miracle maybe that she's talking about or involving in this. You know, it came up, there was like a historical event called The Miracle, and I was like, maybe not that. And then I scrolled down and it was an album called The Miracle, and I clicked on it and it took me to this Wikipedia page that said the rock band Queen. Their album, The Miracle, was their 13th studio album, and it was released May 22nd, 1989. And I was like, whoa, I might be onto something here. And so then I'm doing more research, and the lead single was the song The Miracle, the title track, and that was released November 27th, 1989. And so then I go and I look, how many days are between May 22nd and November 27th? 189 days. Now, I know this math is crazy, but it's like crazy if this is a coincidence, because the chances of these numbers coming up is honestly kind of insane. And I was sitting there like, what? And so I'm trying to delve into why this album was important, or why it would be connected with Taylor at all. And also 22, when they released the album May 22nd, 22 has been a number that's been coming up with the playlist that Taylor put out with all the Max Martin songs, had 22 songs on it. It was an hour and 22 minutes long, and the first song was 22. So I thought that was interesting. I still think that's relevant. The original title of the album was Invisible Men, and 3 weeks before the release, they changed the title to The Miracle. So then I looked up 3 weeks before October 3rd, and that is September 12th, 9/12. And Taylor Nation posted at 9:12 a.m. their original post Easter egg for Taylor's brand new album that's coming out. And there's just a lot of 12s involved with this, obviously, because it's TS12, and that number has been coming up a lot too. So again, I don't know if all of these things are intentional, but it is just a little bit crazy that the numbers don't lie. So then I started to look up like important dates. And so November 27th for Taylor Swift. What's going on these dates? Why would they be important? In 2012, I Knew Her Trouble came out as a single and a music video, November 27th, which is a song that she did with Max Martin and Shellback, and that song marked a shift in genre for her, whether we realized it at the time, because they said Red was a country album, but I Knew Her Trouble was like the first like song that had a dubstep, so much production on it. It was like, you know, a turning point for her. And so I think that's kind of important to note on November 27th, which is the same day that they put out their single, The Miracle. And this one might be a little out there. I'm still unsure if Taylor has a connection to the date May 22nd. In 2024, this was right before she went to play in Portugal, in Lisbon, and she talked about learning Portuguese, how to say welcome to the Eras Tour in Portuguese on the podcast. So I thought that was interesting that she chose Portugal specifically.
How do I say welcome to the Eras Tour in Portuguese? You know, that was the only thing taking up my brain space.
On May 22nd, that's when she was in Lake Como with Travis. So again, just something to note. Now, going back to the Queen album, this was the first album that all members of the band had shared credit on. Like, every single song had every single person's name on it. And so when I thought about that more, I was like, okay, well, this album will be the first album since Reputation that Taylor doesn't have a single solo write on it, because it seems like every single song on this album was done by the three of them, Taylor, Max Martin, and Shellback, and the last time that she didn't have a solo write on a song was Reputation, which is kind of crazy, that parallel there, because, you know, I think the reason Taylor kind of parted ways with them is I heard something that they require songwriting credit on every single song they work on, regardless of if they contributed to lyrics or not. And you know how Taylor feels about her songwriting. She's very, very protective of it. And so I think in certain situations she has goals where she wants to have solo credit on something, and then sometimes when she wants to be more collaborative. And I think this album is one of those where she felt super collaborative, and this entire album is just written by the three of them. I'm expecting all of them to have equal credit on it. Another important thing about this album, The Miracle, is that it kind of marked a shift in their genre to more dance pop rather than rock. The album dealt with a lot of public perception, the need to leave a legacy, and artistic clarity, which I thought was interesting. Those are the words that were coming up when I was researching this album. So I do feel like it draws some parallels with Taylor, because as they were like struggling behind the scenes, they were putting forth like a very positive, upbeat, grand image of the band. And I think that's kind of has to do a lot with the Showgirl, like behind the scenes kind of thing. I Can Do With a Broken Heart, you know. In the song The Miracle, I think there was like one lyric that I thought could possibly be connected or like paralleled in Taylor's work, and that would be this lyric that says, "The wonders of this world go on, the hanging gardens of Babylon," which Taylor Taylor has referenced this in Cowboy Like Me. She says, now you hang from my lips like the gardens of Babylon. Thought that was an interesting parallel. And then also, if we're counting the song she wrote with Gracie Abrams, Us, they say Babylon lovers hanging lifetimes on a vine. Thought that was an interesting parallel. I don't know exactly if this is an intentional connection Taylor has made with this album by Queen, but it is crazy that its 13th album came out in 1989 and it marked a genre shift, had commentary on fame, public perception, coming together behind the scenes even though you're projecting an image, like a facade. There was also an insane visual parallel. I watched the music video from way back then, and there was a scene with the drum, and he hits the drum and water flies up, and it looked exactly like the visual at the very end of The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, going into I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. It's the drum hit and the water splashes up, and that is the end. So I thought that was kind of crazy. And then also the meaning of the song The Miracle is that the greatest miracle of all is love. And if we're going with like the Pinocchio theme, that could also be a theme that Taylor explores in this album, being like, all you need is love to live a happy life. I don't know. So this is a theory that I'll just, keep in my back pocket and see if anything comes from it. But I thought it was super interesting in my research that I came upon that. And then lastly, I want to talk about Reputation being the sister album of the Showgirl. I think everybody can see how many parallels are being drawn between these two albums. First of all, the color. Reputation was black and this is orange. So they are saying Taylor talked about the color being orange on the podcast, going through the orange door. During the Reputation era, orange kind of went with the black. We had the two magazines, black and orange. We had the orange Record Store Day vinyl, and I always thought that was kind of strange that they would do orange when the whole aesthetic of the Reputation era was black and white and gold more so, and red even, but not really orange. Rep was TS6, this is TS12, opposites on a clock, two sides of the same coin. The same photographer, she hasn't worked with that photographer since the Reputation era, and all these photos are so reminiscent and there's so many visual similarities between the poses. I'll find a few other, I'll show you guys all of those that I saw. Like I said earlier, the choppy pieces on the CD, and if we're looking at the Eras tour where The Smallest Man Who Ever Lives, she dies and it is kind of resurrected as this showgirl, it definitely feels like the old Taylor is dead. And this is the rise of the showgirl. The death of a showgirl, the life of a showgirl. Maybe the death of a showgirl isn't a double album, it's Reputation. And I think this is why she didn't re-record Reputation. I feel like she didn't feel the need to. She knew this album was coming. And now if you search Taylor Swift canceled, that whole situation in 2016 won't show up. All that drama, it will just be this album. And I feel like, again, this is her seeing how everything has come back around in a positive way for her and not a positive way for all the people who wronged her, I guess. If we look at VMAs 2022, when she announced Midnights, she had that outfit on that was so reminiscent of Reputation, Look What You Made Me Do video. The jewels and the way that her makeup was very reminiscent of her in the bathtub of Jewels. And if we look at the cover of this album, she's literally in a bathtub covered in jewels. And I feel like that is a strong comparison there. But both of those look like they inspired this photo shoot. Not to mention that she literally filmed Delicate in this theater, a Reputation era music video, who, by the way, is kind of like a showgirl. Her flapper outfit, dancing around, doing a whole performance in there. Very connected with this theme. This is another thing that kind of like I unlocked from my memory, but when she was interviewed for Time Person of the Year and they asked her about Reputation, she said the Rep vault tracks are fire. And so I still believe that the Rep vault tracks exist, but the fact that she referred to them as fire is so interesting, especially because they are using the fire heart emoji for this era. I feel like that's a little bit connected or something, I don't know. I think there's a theme on this album of being happy is revenge, and I think that was the theme of Reputation as well. It was like at her lowest of low, she made it into something so wildly successful, and everybody thought she wasn't going to be able to sell tickets to the Reputation tour when she was selling out stadiums. And then after that, she was in a really happy relationship. She truly was happy during that time. I also wrote Orange is the New Black. which is just like a funny saying. I don't know. Maybe she didn't want her old label to own the masters to this type of album, and she really kept emphasizing how long she's wanted to make this album. So I truly wonder how long it has been for her wanting to make this album.
I feel like we could just knock it out of the park if we went back in. This is the record I've been wanting to make for a very long time. Creating an album and keeping the bar really high is something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. We've been waiting years to come back together and make this project.
Because it could have been as far back as the Reputation era. I don't think this is a double album. I do feel like this is kind of like a companion or like a complementary sister album to Reputation. Maybe like an older, wiser sister. And truly, when you think about it, Reputation is her only true love album that she kind of wrote while she was still in the honeymoon phase, the love phase, the everything is good phase, because even when we get to Lover, we get a lot more nuance in how she's feeling about her relationship with Afterglow, The Archer, Cruel Summer, Cornelia Street. There's so much more nuance than there was in Reputation, with she was just like obsessed with him and in love. And so I feel like this album might be another album where she's just like so fearlessly heart first in love with Travis and everything. And then somebody pointed out that there was one other time she worked with the Reputation photographer, and it was for a Vogue shoot. I think it was for London in January of 2018. And that photo shoot is very similar in style to this photo shoot. Like, she looks like an old showgirl, like old Hollywood in some of these pictures, but there's one picture where she's in water and just her head is above the water, and I thought that was kind of a crazy parallel with that photo shoot, because I don't think there's any other kind of photo shoot where that is a thing. There's a poem that was released with that photo shoot that became a lot of lyrics later on, which I thought was super interesting. And then lastly, I want to talk about the Look What You Made Me Do video, because I feel like at one point she said people still haven't found all the Easter eggs in this video, which haunts me daily. But obviously we had the bathtub scene. She's in the bathtub of jewels, and we cannot forget about our orange girly in the cage. She is our showgirl that's trapped, and I feel like there's this like image Taylor has brought with her through each era, like this version of her that just is trapped. You know what I mean? We've got her in the cage, and she's like eating like lobster, and like she's eating well, but she's trapped in this cage. That could be a comment on a lot of things, but the main thing is she's trapped, and she's in orange. And at the end of the video, that Taylor is in the line of all the Taylors, standing at the very end, arms crossed, like doesn't say a single thing the entire time. All the other Taylors are like bickering and talking to each other, and she's just sitting there like not saying a thing. And then on the plane, there's a TS in orange behind her, and then there's the scene where she's walking out of the store and she's like all glammed up, and she has a jaguar on a leash walking away, and that same TS logo is on the outside of the store. Again, I don't know what these all point to, but it's very interesting. The jaguar connects with the necklace that she was wearing in the podcast. All this to say, I know that I'm usually like a super clown for, you know, the lost album Karma. Do I truly believe she created an entire album that she scrapped? No, not really, but I do believe in the idea of Karma, even if it wasn't called that. Maybe it was always called Showgirl, or she had this vision of doing this type of album, but she just was waiting for the right time in her life to create something like this. And I feel like sometimes you guys underestimate Taylor and how far out she plans things and how intentional she is, because being here in the fandom for so long, it's so like Taylor to do something like this and, you know, pick up something from her past and make it new. We know this with, you know, the Taylor's versions and everything. And especially the clip of her that we always bring up where she says, how far in advance is too advance? Like, can I plan something 3 years ahead? And I think we just gotta keep that in mind going into this era. But it has been just like so much fun to see everybody like trying to decode the Easter eggs and doing all these things, and just like realizing how insane Taylor is. Her brain is just crazy. I'm really hoping that we get a music video to go along with this. Music video means more Easter eggs. Those are my favorite ones. I do wonder if she will release a song before the album comes out. It's not looking like it, because, you know, she hasn't put out a lead single in a really long time, so I feel like she just wants us to have this album all at once, because she really doesn't need the promo. Let's be real. Like, she does not need any more promo. Oh my gosh, I've been talking for literally 2 hours, but thank you guys so much for being here. If you stayed till the very end, I appreciate you. Let me know what you think about all of the theories and Easter eggs that I brought up, and if you have anything else to contribute, please let me know. I will be doing another video on the track list, so look out for that. Very excited for the next countdown. I'm gonna guess it's gonna be red glitter or silver glitter next time, based on our past two. And yeah, stay delusional, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.